All right, everybody, welcome back to Zero Distortion, where we cut through the noise and get real about leadership, politics, and really the future of this country. So my guest today, he's not just someone who talks about integrity. He actually lives it. Casey Weinstein. He's a U.S. Air Force veteran. He's a dad. He's a public servant and state representative in Ohio who's been a vocal critic of corruption. He's been a champion for transparency and one of the few voices in state politics who consistently speaks with clarity, not cowardice. He served in one of the toughest political environments, that being the Ohio's GOP-controlled legislature, and still managed to lead on big issues like public health, ethics, and energy accountability. And now, he's exploring a run for the U.S. Senate. So we're going to talk to him about what that takes, what's broken in our system, and what real leadership looks like when it's not filtered through a PR team. So let's get into it. Hey, Casey, how are you doing today?
I am good, Russ. Thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here. Been looking forward to this.
I'm excited that we're able to chat. I know we met, I'm going to say 3 years ago. You took the time we met for some coffee and just talking really some clean energy, but some other things at that time. So I was thankful then that you took a little time because you didn't know who I was and we were able to chat.
Of course, man. One of my favorite things to do is just that: meet new people, sit down for coffee, and usually at Heartwood, I might have a spot, and just like listen and get to know about the things that people are into, about the projects they're working on. Certainly, I'm all in on all of your efforts on the renewable energy front, as tough as that space is. But that was exciting to meet you. Love the energy behind what you're doing. Love how you kind of, all the different stops you've taken in your life. It's fascinating. So that was great.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate you saying that. Well, let's kind of get into it because folks, I think, are pretty interested in you and not only what you've done in the past, but what you're looking for to do in the future. I know I'm very excited whenever I heard about it, but let's start here. You've got a military background, got a tech career, and you're in, I'm going to say, one of the most lopsided state houses in the country. What's shaped your leadership style through all of that? Because I'm assuming you've had to adapt here and there.
That's a great question. For me, the formative years for that, developing a leadership style, were the Air Force Academy. Where when I was 17 years old, got my permission slip and joined the class of 2004. That first year or two at the academy, really it's the first 2 years, you learn to be a follower, right? You're not in a leadership position, although you start to that second year, but really you are under the command or under the responsibility of others, right? And that's what they teach us is, in order to be a great leader, you need to learn how to be a follower first. And, I had an opportunity during that time to take in a lot of different leadership styles and see what worked for me and what resonated with me. And it was a pressure cooker of an environment too, right? We have, a mission to accomplish, and schoolwork and all the military responsibilities, and 9/11 happened during that time. So, I mean, it was a very, very sort of dynamic environment for me. What I came away from that is a leadership style that very much is about sort of building a family within that unit, within that organization, mutual kind of responsibility toward each other, caring about each other, trying to build human and interpersonal relationships, and had the opportunity at the Air Force Academy to be a leader within the basic cadet training program, which is when, the first summer that those new cadets come in and lead units there. I served on wing staff and group staffs. I served 1,000 and 4,000 cadets in those roles, and was able to kind of hone that skill. And in my private sector career, I carried that forward, very much about building that sort of work-family atmosphere within our teams, so that there's mutual accountability and mutual support, and that beyond trying to hit a number or whatever we're trying to do, We care about each other, and we stick together. And that having that core, having that right team is such a big part of being successful overall. And I've been able to carry those lessons forward. And in the public sector, in my elected official capacity, I've just tried to be someone who shows up, who is present, who will always sit down, who's accessible, who's available, so that I can kind of build that sort of relationship with my constituents where they get to know me as a person, not just as a politician. And then we're able to build something like a, kind of a relationship in that capacity too.
Yeah, that's so important. I've noticed that some people, they're maybe not listening. And a saying I've I don't know, taken on. I didn't make it myself, but it's listening isn't waiting for your turn to talk, and it's actually
Right.
taking in that information. And I think that's so important. And I know from whenever we met that's definitely your style. Is there like a North Star that you really have to focus on whenever you're getting ready to take a vote, and maybe you're in the minority, maybe you're the only no vote in the room? I don't know if you've had that experience yet, but whenever you're on the floor to take a vote, what does that look like if you're voting your conscience, but you've got a lot of pressure to vote a different way?
Yeah, I think about how I will communicate this to my constituents.
Mm.
And, there's no hiding on votes, right? They're going to be out there, and there's enough eyes on us, even as state senators. I know we kind of fly under the radar in some regards, certainly under like the U.S. Senate and Congress, but people are tuned in, people are watching, people care about the decisions that we make down there. So, what goes through my mind is, how do I communicate this to my voters at a town hall? How, when I sit down with people like Russ to talk about renewable energy or small businesses or leadership, how do I defend my votes to them? And I vote accordingly, and sometimes I have been. Usually, I'll say usually, most of our votes were passing bills together, but almost every session, there is something where I'm voting no, unfortunately, that I think is going to harm my constituents. And if there's a piece of legislation that I think will harm my constituents, and in particular the most vulnerable of them, I'll vote no. And I'm like ready at all times to stand up in front of a room of people and defend that, or sit down face to face with someone and defend that. And so they're going to hear from me. I don't hold back on issues. I don't shy away from sharing my views or how I feel about a particular issue. They're going to hear from me one way or another. And what I've heard from people is that even if they disagree with me half the time, or even the majority of the time, the fact that I communicate and tell them where I stand on an issue and why I voted a particular way, they can appreciate that part of it. So that goes back to that trust and that relationship you build. And that comes with honest and open communication, which is the only way to do it.
Yeah, that's seems to be missing in our political atmosphere these days. It's a head scratcher a lot of times. Sometimes you want to hit your head with a hammer, or I do at times. But a piece of legislation that made me beat my head against the wall, it was HB 6. And I know you've got some thoughts on that, and there's been some movement on that. We talked with Tristan Rader a while back, and he was sharing some more. But I don't think a lot of people outside of Ohio realize how deep that HB 6 scandal really went. And you called it out pretty early, if I remember correctly. What did that moment reveal to you about how the system actually works?
Well, let me take you back to 2018, when I was running for a House seat, and the opponent that I was running against was a Larry Householder candidate. And of course, Larry Householder was the disgraced, now in jail, in prison speaker who funneled the dark money and got HB 6 to pass. Sitting on the couch with my wife, watching football, NFL football on a Sunday night, going into 60 Minutes, or maybe it was 60 Minutes going into football. Either way, it was like the most expensive TV. And a call came in. I'm sorry, a commercial came on. Geez, boy, how's my day been? A lot of phone calls. And it was an attack ad against me, saying that I was under investigation for breaking the law. And it was so effective and so like shock and awe. Like, how did they afford this TV? I believed it. It was a Sunday night. I was like, oh my God, what have I done? What I got to call the ethics commission. I'm under investigation. And they're airing this commercial on expensive TV. Everybody's seeing this. Well, turns out the next morning, we called the ethics commission, and nope, wasn't under investigation. It was an attack ad that they were airing in a few select districts from a group called Hardworking Ohioans. That was a project of Larry Householder that was funded by $60 million plus of money funneled to him, mostly from First Energy, to pass this bill that would allow for riders and bailouts that just became essentially a slush fund for them. So it was very, very much a pay-to-play situation. And unfortunately, Ohioans were harmed in that. We bailed out 2 nuclear plants that didn't need to be bailed out. We bailed out 2 coal plants, one of which is in Indiana, that unfortunately probably did need to be bailed out. But we had no business doing that. They were built in the 1950s. They're no longer economically competitive. So fast forward a couple years, Larry Householder is arrested. All of this comes to light. There's actually a great documentary on HBO about this right now. But
Yep.
We started repealing little bits, just like the nuclear bailout portion, but we didn't get to the fact that they gutted our renewable energy standards. They gutted our energy efficiency standards. Finally, this year, years and years later, we got to yes on the coal bailout repeal. So we were able to bring a bipartisan coalition together. And I'm shout out to my Republican colleagues, because obviously this can't happen without them. But after years of offering this bill, it finally got rolled into an omnibus Senate bill, and we did roll back the repeal of those coal plants. But Ohioans had paid almost $600 million of illegal and fraudulent riders by the time we repealed it. So very frustrating, very corrupt. And that's unfortunately just the way things work at the Statehouse sometimes.
Yeah, isn't that disappointing? And I believe I've heard some rumors that Householder is lobbying for a pardon from the current administration. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's they got 600 million out of it, right? So even if it's repealed, they've still got that. So the damage was done. But again, there's only so much that you can do when you're in the minority. So let me ask you this: let's zoom out past Ohio and talk about the state of just American politics. This really isn't what public service is supposed to be. I think you'd agree. So what do you feel is really broken, and do you feel that it's fixable?
I go back to 9/11, and that could have been a moment of great division in our country. And then I think about George W. Bush, who, wasn't someone I voted for, but he was someone I respected. It was actually my first salute as an officer when I graduated, because he was our graduation speaker. After 9/11, he used the bully pulpit, the presidency, to lower the temperature within our country and talk about our Islamic American brothers and sisters as our neighbors and our friends and as Americans. And as a result, you didn't see what could have been a tremendous backlash against them occur. A lot of this is set from the tone at the top, right? And you go back to Bill Clinton, you think about Barack Obama and Joe Biden. These are people who would go into healing mode and support mode and repair the country mode and understood the power of the presidency in that way. And now we just have the exact opposite, right? We have someone who, after 2 of my fellow legislators were shot in Minnesota, refused to call the governor or to engage or really even offer any words of support or kindness because they were Democrats, right? And that he has the loudest and strongest pulpit in the world. And when the tone is being set that way at that level, it just creates a permission structure for everyone else to act that way. And I see it locally in the nastiness that I've encountered and my family's encountered, unfortunately. And you see that trickle down. That tone is set from the top. And so, like I'm afraid that's a huge change in terms of the tenor and tone of how we do politics in this country. And we're worse off for it. So, I'm looking forward to one day we have a president who cares about people and who really tries to heal and use the power of that office to bring Americans together, because that's not what we have now.
Yeah, I mean, everybody remembers where they were 9/11. If folks that's what, 24 years ago now, right? Coming up on 24 years. So it's hard to believe, but I remember exactly where I was at. And I think everybody that lived through that does. As the days and weeks passed, I can't remember a time that I felt more closeness, more unity with my fellow Americans, right? Everybody kind of banded together. Where I was at, I assume that's the way it was across most of the U.S., but it's a polar opposite now.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is. And, as great as George W. Bush was, the Iraq War became a divisive thing after that. But, we kind of went back into our corners at that point. But that's the kind of unity people want. And that's the kind of, I hear it over and over again. When you see someone around town, you can sit down and have a cup of coffee with them, grab a beer, see them, say hi, be friendly. Yeah, we disagree on whatever issue or issues, but we're neighbors, we're friends, we're Americans. We all want what's best for our families. That's the tone, and that's the temperature that people want in their politics. And I've sought that. I try to strike a balance between calling people out when I think they're doing really damaging, harmful things for our state, while at the same time finding ways to work with them because I have to get bills done. And I've been able to do that over the years. So trying to be part of that solution.
Well, and it's different now than it was back in the early 2000s with social media and these platforms. People are very brave behind a keyboard now, right? Yeah. So I think that's a huge factor in some of this divisiveness. But again, I'm like you. I think it'll eventually swing closer to the middle where most people are comfortable. But with that, go ahead.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. There's things that, I mean, we have families being torn apart right now because one may see a certain view and somebody else sees another one. I don't know when this has really happened. I'm sure it has throughout our history, but God, I hate to say Civil War, but that's the one thing that comes to my mind when you have such a divisive, arena that we're in right now.
Yeah, completely agree. And hope that, we have the right kind of candidates who are willing to take us past this. And that begins at the top, right? So we'll see.
Well, and that kind of leads me into this next question. There's rumor that you may be exploring a run for the Senate. I want to know all about it. I'm very much in favor of this, but can you talk a little bit about what you're maybe considering here?
Yeah, thanks, Russ. I am. I'm, first of all, let me put it out there that, and I've been really clear about this, that I've always been and will remain on Team Sherrod Brown, right? I think I know he was a great senator for many years for us, and I would love it if he decides to throw his hat in the ring again, because I think he can beat John Huston, I think he would get reelected back into the Senate, which would be a great thing for Ohioans. And I can tell you as a legislator, it's great to have a great U.S. senator because oftentimes federal issues come our way or state issues may come their way. And that communication and that work together is so important for really great constituent services. But if Sherrod decides not to, then yeah, it's absolutely something I'm considering. Have had discussions with my family, discussions with voters and constituents, and I've put kind of put it out there a little bit, and was really heartened by the positive reaction that came from that. I just for sure, like, I have young kids. I love the balance right now of the state legislature where I drive home. I don't stay the night there. The vast majority of nights I'm home, and I love being there and seeing them grow up. I mean, they're young, so I've got to balance that. My wife has her own career, right? I've got a private sector career I would have to end to do this. So there's a lot that's kind of weighing on my mind for it, but that's balanced by a sense of duty for our state and for our country. And I think a lot's at stake in this next election. And I want to be part of the solution. I want to be part of that group that leads us through this. And I think I could. So if that window and opportunity presents itself, and I think we'll know here in the next couple months, then I'll make that decision and make that public. And if that's the route I do go, I'll be all in. But if we have a really, really strong candidate that emerges, whether that's Sherrod or someone else, then I'll be on their team fighting every day for them. So that's kind of where my head's at for it. But I've received a lot of encouragement, and I'm really, really heartened and grateful for that.
Well, I'm not surprised you received a lot of encouragement at all. I would be surprised if you didn't. So I think that's great. Have you talked with Sherrod Brown? And I guess he's kind of still thinking things over, or I guess is the clock ticking a little bit for making that decision for both you and for him?
Yeah, I have talked to him, and he was really open with, he's kind of, I think what he actually just has said publicly this week was he's kind of torn between what to do. I think he would make an amazing governor. I know he was a great senator. He may make a decision that, he's ready to turn the page. Like, I don't know. I don't think he's made that decision yet. And I certainly don't want to speak for him, but it's like he, in my view, deserves all the time in the world for that, to make that right choice. He has given so much to our state that he's earned the right to really, really think about that and talk through it with his family. And so, if that path emerges for new candidates, then that'll be my North Star, is to serve like Sherrod, and serve in his sort of kind of in his image, and try to bring that leadership and that service back to Ohio.
I had the opportunity to meet Sherrod, Senator Brown. I was at Carroll County for that big combined cycle project. This was in 2016, I guess, maybe 2017. But he came out and did a site visit, and they decided I'd be the one to give him the tour. So we walked through and had a good time. I got to know him a little bit, and I could tell because the questions he was asking was, like, why isn't more of this being done here in the state of Ohio? And we were talking about like engineering. The company that we were working with, Bechtel, most of their engineering was done overseas. And he was asking the question, why aren't we doing this here? He said, I'd love for it to be in Ohio, but why not at least in the U.S.? And I said, that's a great question. So I pulled one of the folks over who, a little more senior than me, actually the project manager for Bechtel, and said, hey, got a question over here. But you could tell he really cares about the workers, about the constituents. That came through. And he spoke in a way that it wasn't like any type of accusation. He said, "Hey, I wonder, is there something we could do here that, you could have this type of work done closer to the projects?" So I really admired that about him as far as how he proceeded with the questions. And I didn't know him. I had just moved to Ohio, so I didn't know who the guy was from Adam. But I like what you're saying about, how he's been a leader and done a lot of great things for the state of Ohio.
Yeah, and those connections that he's built, that's a great story. And I'm not surprised they chose you to be the guy. But great story. Example of the kind of connections he's made with Ohioans over decades. So I hope he runs. I really do, whether it's for Senate or governor. I am in his corner, and I'm excited to be part of that for whatever comes next for him, because that connection is real. Ohioans know what they're going to get with Sherrod, and it's why he outperformed Trump on the ballot by almost 9 points. People crossed over to vote for him. That's the power that he brings. So I'll stay tuned and wait for him to make that call. But it's cool that you've had that interaction with him.
Well, he was, very kind to me. So I can't say enough nice things about that day with him. He was great. What if he decides he wants to run for Senate and there's still a governor position? Is that something you ever kind of thought about?
I think I would have to feel that out a little bit. Probably not. We have a great candidate in Amy Acton, who's running, and I think the world of Amy, and admire her heart in it. She's running a really strong campaign. So, I kind of have to get a lay of the land and where things are at that point. I definitely am open to taking a next step to be able to serve more Ohioans. That's in me. Whether that's now or later, I don't know. There's a lot of things to balance and weigh, but I think some big decisions will be made here in the next 6 weeks or so.
Well, yeah, that timeline probably makes sense. And, whether it's serving at, the state level, as the governor in DC, or just serving wherever, I've got a question for you. It's about courage, and something that bugs a lot of people. It's watching what's going on in national politics right now. And the thought I have, and I think a lot of people are asking, is where's the courage? Why are so many elected officials so afraid to be courageous, even if they may get primaried, so to speak?
I think that there's this desire for self-preservation, right? And clinging to status that seems to, the status of being a member of Congress or a member of a legislature, or that title or that office or whatever, that outweighs, ultimately doing the right thing for the people you serve. And I don't understand that. I'm actually a proponent of term limits. I think I can see both sides of the argument. I really can there, but ultimately I come down on the fact that we should not be sending people to serve for life, or even for 20, 30 years. It should be something you go do. I think 8 actually is a pretty good, I think we do it pretty well in Ohio. You go down for 8 years and that's your time's up, right? So there's that. And then the second piece is, gerrymandering, right? The way districts are drawn, people are insulated from the public will, Russ. They really are. They're in bubbles that they design themselves that, the median voter doesn't matter to them. It's a relatively small number of primary voters that matter to them. And so they're safe in making decisions that are outside the mainstream, that hurt their constituents, and they don't have to be courageous, right? If we had more districts drawn toward the median voter, and I'm not talking about let's not create Democratic leaning districts, let's create 50-50s as wherever we can go, or 48, 52s, somewhere in that range of that represents where people really are. That would make that self-preservation gene to like, all right, well, if I want to stick around, I need to be accountable to the median voter, not to the extreme. That'll change behavior. Unfortunately, we didn't get issue 1 passed. It was polling extremely well, and then they flipped up the language. Frank LaRose flipped the language up to confuse people, and it worked. But that's the roadmap out. Fair districts.
Yeah, that's I remember that specifically. You're like, what am I voting for? Should I vote yes or should I vote no on this? I thought I was supposed to vote this way because this is what it would do, but then it changed. And yeah, there's a lot of confusion out there. So that's just not cool either.
Yeah.
And we see, I think you're onto something whenever you mention about what's going on with the gerrymandering and people really not caring, it seems, in I'm talking more so DC, of what their constituents really want or what's best for them. I just looked back at this bill that was passed and signed into law less than a week ago. It makes really no sense to so many, and those are the people that understand it. The more people that got the verbiage, so to speak, and what it really means, the more that disliked it. It was like 60% dislike, even on some of these more favorable news networks doing some of the polling, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, kind of mirrors what's happened in Ohio, which is favoring the wealthy, favoring the Haslams and their $600 million stadium request, providing tax cuts for only the wealthiest Ohioans at the expense of libraries, public schools, food banks, clean water programs, childhood cancer research funding. That's what we cut in order to find money for tax cuts. And we found money for the Haslams, $600 million. Again, that number, $600 million, sort of mirrors what happened at the national level, where they're fighting tooth and nail to preserve Trump tax cuts for only the wealthiest, at the expense of Medicaid, at the expense of our health coverage, at the expense of renewable energy programs, clean air, clean water. It's a trade-off that I think people see through. And it helps them understand, well, what are the priorities of the folks down in Columbus? What are the priorities in DC when it's all about you? The North Star is the tax cuts for the wealthiest. The North Star is the billionaire subsidy. And then you back into the cuts to get there. That's just the absolute wrong priority. People know, man. People really know. They are tuned in, even at the state level. They know what's going on. And I'm going to do everything I can, whether I'm running for office at that next level or not, to make sure they know.
Well, the messaging matters. And typically, I'm going to say here in the last few elections, it seems the GOP has done a great job at messaging and getting a certain message out. Not that it's true, but they've been able to resonate with what they've said, and it's not been so much the same on the other side. But I don't know, is there a thought you have as far as messaging and getting the right message across so people actually know here's what this bill will do, or here's what this will mean?
Yeah, I mean, consistency is one thing, saying it over and over and over again so people hear it. And then simplicity in the message. I mean, there's so much noise out there and people have so many inputs coming at them for, just setting aside the fact that people have busy lives and only have so much time really to be able to tune into what's going on at the Statehouse, for example. And then when they get on their phones, they've got 1,000 messages coming at them. So a simple, clear, direct message cuts through. And right now, I'm pointing to that stadium up in Brook Park and the billionaire Haslams who found a way to dig into our unclaimed fund balance to get grants from the state for that, while we cut libraries and schools and food banks and kids' cancer research. Like, that to me is a very simple message. Tax cuts, giveaways that people are upset about, and they're paying for it with their, with cuts to their local governments that may require shifts to local taxes. So they'll literally be bailing these these billionaires out and just bought a $25 million mansion in Florida. Like, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. So I know being clear and consistent. And you know what? You have to be bold. You really have to be bold to cut through. You're not going to see on my page, happy second cousins day. No offense to second cousins. I love them. You're not going to see generic stuff like that. You're going to see where I stand on issues. You're going to see me calling people out when they need to be called out, and fighting for my constituents as boldly as I can. And I make no apologies for that. That's who I am. Folks have sent me down in a Republican district. We flipped it to the Democrats in 2018. I fought off two very, very tough re-elections in 2020 and 22. Now I'm moved on to the Senate, and I'm just going to keep being as authentically me as I can, and do my absolute best to serve my constituents going forward.
I think that's so important, and it's whenever I keep thinking about messaging, and what really hits me is when you see these personal stories and actual, the faces that go with, well, I had this SNAP benefit, and then it was taken away, and now here's what my life looks like. I hate how they paint so many of these folks that get these that are on these programs as lazy or undeserving. I'm not saying there's not some fraud going on out there. I'm sure there is, but gosh, it's painted like it's everybody. But that's a whole other podcast, probably, Casey. Too.
Right. Right.
Well, so if folks want to get a hold of you, is there a way that you'd want them to reach out to say, hey, Casey, I support you at this, or I'd rather see you run for governor, or whatever that may be? What's the best way for folks to communicate with you?
Yeah, you can always reach out to our office. So if you Google State Senator Casey Weinstein, our office link comes right up, and there's ways to communicate directly with my team. But for me, follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Senator Weinstein, Senator Casey Weinstein on Facebook. You can message me, you can comment. I respond to the comments. You can message me right through that. And I personally respond to those messages. And so if you've got an issue, if you've got a problem, if you've got a question, you're going to get an answer from me or from my office very quickly. But if you need to speak to me, I will always make myself available. And as you know, Russ, and we're due for another coffee. Because
we need to do that soon. Let's get that on the calendar. And I think I reached out to you, or we connected on LinkedIn, and I think that's how we started talking was on LinkedIn messaging.
Yeah, you are a great follow on LinkedIn. Love to see everything you're up to there. So, talk about good communication. But yeah, follow me on Facebook or Instagram or Threads or Blue Sky at Senator Weinstein, and you will, if you have any question, you'll get a response.
Well, you're not hard to find or to communicate with. So I encourage everybody to reach out with any questions, comments, because I can guarantee you will respond. I know that for sure. So, Casey, I want to thank you for your time. I've learned a lot. I'm very excited to see what happens over the next, let's say, 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, I think definitely by the end of September, at the latest, we'll have some resolution about what's coming next.
Well, we might have to get you back on. Definitely, you're welcome anytime, but would love for you to make an announcement, because I think that's, again, exciting stuff. And we need more people that have courage, have conviction, and stand up for what's right for their constituents and their community members. So I encourage you to seriously consider that. Talk with Mr. Brown and see how it goes. But I want to thank you so much for your service and everything you've done, not only in the military, obviously, for that, but at the Statehouse. That's been fantastic, and everything you've contributed to the state of Ohio.
Well, thank you, Russ, very much. I'm thankful to call you a friend, and to be connected, and just to follow all the great work you're doing. And it's an honor to be on the podcast, and I'll come back anytime I'm invited.
Well, thank you so much. And guys, I know you got value out of this, so click the subscribe button, like it, hit the alert bell, and you tune in so you don't miss any of these great conversations with these amazing people. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.